Okay, so I created 5 notebooks lately. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, not 500, not 5,000, but 5. And in the last 10 days, I've had 95 sales with them. So how did I do that? Now, this is probably going to be a long-ish video, but stick with it. It's going to be totally worth it. And it's not going to be what you think either. So I've always hated the idea of selling notebooks through Amazon KDP. I've always said on my channel that I think people should avoid doing it because I know that most people that take up that pursuit are just going to waste their time. But it's hard to argue against there being a very big demand for them, because there is. But it's also very competitive, like very, very competitive. But what I've noticed, and this probably spawns from YouTube channels mostly, is that we go through trends and phases with publishing. So first we had no content books, and then people started to say that's saturated, do low content books instead. Now people are saying you should do medium content books because low content books are saturated. And now some people are even saying that high content books are the only way forward. But if we're constantly chasing trends as to what works and what isn't saturated, won't we eventually just run out of trends to chase? So I say let's go full circle. Let's go all the way back to notebooks and see if the answer is to keep chasing trends or to change your approach to publishing in general. So this video is not going to be a video about creating notebooks per se. It's not a hyped up, unrealistic look at that side of KDP. That's not the point. In this video, I'm going to take a look at the reality of selling notebooks and no content books through Amazon KDP, the hype that follows that, how I made sales with those 5 notebooks that I created, and to also show off another book that I had published that follows the same strategy that I used for those notebooks. Okay, and also I'm going to do, on top of all that, I'm going to do a live example of finding a notebook niche and what I would do to try and make sales with that niche. Okay, so there's a lot in this video and I hope that you stick with it. And also just one more thing, I'm going to touch upon a huge project that I'm working on. It's the reason why I've not created many videos right now that I'm going to be delivering to you, where I'm going to be showing off these notebooks, how I created them, how I marketed them, how I found their niches, etc, etc. And also inside of that project, I'm going to be doing the same for 2 coloring books that I'm currently working on, and possibly for a story book as well. In fact, there's going to be a ridiculous amount going into that project. I'm going to explain more toward the end of the video. So if you're new to the channel, my name is Chris. I've been publishing for around 10 years through Amazon KDP, and I'm here to share that experience with you. So if you're interested in a more realistic and thoughtful approach to publishing, then I'd love for you to subscribe to my channel. So what I want to do in this section of the video is to go over my broad strategy when it comes to selling books through Amazon KDP. So step by step, where we have step 1, where we find a niche which has buyer traffic going to it by doing a little bit of research that you can establish quite easily. Step 2, you find how you can position yourself in that niche to get found, or we could call this niching down. Step 3 is to create something that people are proven to want to spend money on. Step 4 is to try and add value to your book to make it better than your competition, or to at least give the customers a choice of good products to choose from. Step 5, try and get as many sales as you can to your book after releasing it. So this is usually going to come from running ad campaigns. Step 6 is to give your book time to get settled onto Amazon and adjust your ads for profit. So with that in mind, now what I want to do is to use a book that I published a couple months ago to showcase this approach and explain it in more detail. So this is the same approach that I've taken for the notebooks that I've created and the coloring books that I'm in the process of creating. I won't be showing off the new books until I finish the entire project, but I will also be doing an example of a notebook niche that I'm going to find for you on Amazon in just a moment. Okay, so this is one of the books that I created a couple months ago. So let's take a look at how the approach above was applied to this book to make sure that it made sales and continues to stick in the market, hopefully for a long time. So with this book and in any book that we create, we want to make sure that the broad niche, this is the first thing that we do, the very broad niche has got buyer traffic going to it. So ignore all the keywords that we got going on here. What we want to establish is that the broad niche has got traffic going to it before we start to niche down. So in this case, it was math workbooks. And for this is just a simple case of coming over to Amazon, going through the BSRs and making sure that they're consistently low. So I tend to ignore the sponsored products because they're going to show at the top of the page and they might not necessarily be any good. So we can go through here and we already know by checking the BSRs, they're incredibly low. on the first few pages, they're going to be very, very low, which means that there's a ton of buyer traffic going to these books. So the broad niche in this case is very good. So that's a check. That's the easiest check that we can do. And then from there, we need to move on to niche down so that we can find a way of actually getting our books found on Amazon. And before we move on here, you'll probably notice that we can see the BSRs below the books here without actually having to go into the listings. So I'm using an extension here called DS Amazon Quick View. There's a few tools that do this, but this was just the first one that I found. It allows you to check out the BSR without actually having to go into the listing. For me, this is an absolute necessity when it comes to doing quick niche research. Okay, so we can see all the BSRs on this page are really low, and so we don't need to go into every single listing to check the BSR. So the next step from here is that we needed to find a way that we can position ourselves to give ourselves a better chance of being found on Amazon. Because if we just go ahead and upload a generic math workbook, we're probably going to get lost on Amazon. Okay, so the same would be if we uploaded just a notebook, a composition notebook, it would get lost on Amazon. So the same applies here, but what we need to do is to niche down where it makes sense to niche down. Okay, so we're not niching down for the sake of it. We want to niche down, but also that the niching down part has to have buyer traffic going to it as well. So I'm not going to get into too much detail with how I settled on addition and subtraction workbook as the title slash niche down part of this book, but I will get into that in a little bit more detail in the live example that I do later on in this video. But just know that I used a couple bits of software. I used the search bar, I use other people's listings, I use a bit of common sense, and eventually I ended up with addition and subtraction workbook. Okay, so once we've niched down, we then need to make sure that the niche down section of the book also has traffic going to it. So we established that the broad niche math workbook has got traffic going to it. So we now need to establish that addition and subtraction workbooks are also being searched for as well. Okay, also have buyer traffic going to them. So what we can do is just do the same thing and search for that on Amazon. And I'm kind of doing this in a bit of a funny order because I would have done this search first before establishing what the book title was. Okay, so this is kind of in reverse, but addition and subtraction workbook, again, we just want to go through, make sure that the first couple pages, or the first page at least, has got some books that are very, very low, that are addition and subtraction related. You know, these are very low. My book pops up here pretty high up with a pretty good ranking, now with 3 5-star reviews, which is fantastic. So had my book not been here prior to its release, I would have looked through this and gone, yep, addition and subtraction looks like it's got some really good traffic going to buyer traffic going to it as well, because all the BSRs are consistently low. So for me, it's hard to give a number. I know some people like to say, hey, don't touch any niche that's got a BSR of less than 500,000 or something. For me, that's a little bit that's unnecessarily complicated. What I like to do is just to make sure that there's a fair few that have like under 100,000, because you're going to get some on the first page that are like ranked 1 or 2 million. But for the most part, what I can see going through all these is that the BSRs are consistently really low, so they're all kind of under 500,000. Most of them under 300,000. There's a lot under 20,000. There's some that go even lower than that, like 2,000 here as well. So there's one that's a little bit higher, but it's just been released and doesn't have many reviews on it. Doesn't have any reviews on it, sorry. So we'd have to establish here that, you know, this niching down part, this niche, the sub niche, is pretty strong as well. And like I say, throughout this video, when I do the live example, I will go into a little bit more detail with that as well. And also when the big case studies come out, I will go into full detail with them as well. So from there, we obviously needed to create the interior for the book. We had the book cover outsourced. And then what we did, we launched the book, and then as soon as the book went live, we made sure that the price was at a break even. So if anyone was watching me during whilst I was releasing this book, you know that I priced it around $5.20, which is the lowest that I could have priced it, and then immediately started running ads to that just to try and get as many sales as possible the first sort of couple weeks of its release. Okay, because that's important. Want to make sure that our books are getting sales as soon as possible. So just to showcase the importance of thinking about every book that you publish in the long run, what I'm going to do is to load up a tool here that's going to show off the historic sales data and price of this book. Okay, and hopefully that's going to show you the importance of having that long-term mindset when it comes to publishing. Okay, so I think this one's by Helium 10. Like, you don't need this. Like, this is just me trying to make a point here. So if I just come back to it's probably only been 90 days. I think it's been 2 months since the book was released. So as you can see, the book was released here. This might be a little bit complicated for some people, but it's basically just a chart that shows off the the BSR of this book. Okay, so what we can see here on the screen is that we released the book. When's this? January, February, March, April, May, June, July 13th. It went live. The sales rank was 243,000. So the price was break even at 520, as you can see here. And we started running ads to that just to try and get some sales as soon as possible. Okay, so let's just follow the journey of this book here until I start raising the price. Okay, so it's staying at 520. The BSR starts going down, obviously, because the ads are converting. 520. The BSR is looking pretty good, but we're not making any money from the book yet. We just want to make sure that we get sales from the book. Okay, so I think around this point coming up soon, I think I had maybe one review on it, and I thought, you know, I think I have enough sales now to have like an established position on Amazon. Okay, so I thought like the book was sticking on the front page for the keyword that I wanted to stick for. So I thought now's the time. If people want this book, if they're going to pay $520, they're going to pay $6.99. Okay, so I raised the price to $6.99, and as we can see here, the BSR stays pretty damn good. We hit some really low points here, down to, what's the lowest, possibly down to 42,000, and it stays like that because it's sticking well in the marketplace because of this initial release where we got a load of sales. We did pretty much everything right for this book. Okay, so also just one more thing here is to note that during this I'm also keeping the ad campaigns going the whole time, but as I'm keeping them going, what I'm doing is adjusting them over time. So at the start here, we were losing a little bit of money from the ad campaigns, but as we start, and I'll show this off in the case studies that I create for the notebooks and the coloring books, as we go through time, we're going to be adjusting those ad campaigns to make sure that they're breaking even, or even turning some of the ad campaigns off that we're not happy with. Okay, so I'm going to go into that in more detail, but you always want to be working on your ad campaigns if you're going to be running them, and eventually you'll get to the point where your book sticks in the marketplace, gets good reviews, and stays on Amazon for a long time. Okay, so like I say, this is the importance of having long-term mindset for every single book that you publish. Okay, so now that you've seen this in action, you've seen it on a book that I've actually created, a book that's stuck in the marketplace, making sales, has good reviews. Let's try and do a live example now for composition notebooks. Okay, so remember the math workbook, that was the broad niche. So composition notebooks are the broad niche here. Now this is way too competitive. There are way too many books to just shove a book out there and hope that it makes sales. You're not going to get onto the front page by just putting out thoughtless composition notebooks, line journals, planners, blah 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 blah. Like all those things, you're not going to get found. If you do, you're very lucky. So since this is slightly different to the math thing, that there are just so many different ways that we can go with composition notebooks, what we basically need to do is just start doing some niche research. Okay, so we don't need any videos, no niche videos. We don't need them. We don't need anything like that to find these niches. Okay, so let me tell you something. The more that you do yourself, the better understanding that you'll have of the niche that you're trying to enter, and also you'll have a better understanding of what your true competition is like. Okay, you won't have to rely on anyone else. You won't have to rely on any tool, anything like that to tell you what the competition is like. You're going to get an idea of what your actual competition is like. Because what people do is they'll find a niche, they'll look at the search results and see that it's quite high, and they'll be like, oh my god, it's impossible to make sales of this, and then they won't bother. But the reality is that there isn't as much specific competition as you think there is. So in this live example, I'm going to show you what I mean by that. So with the niche research, let's just let Amazon guide us. Okay, so let's just go anywhere we want on Amazon. We've got our broad niche in here, which is composition notebooks. Let's just start clicking through Amazon. Like, this is niche research in its most basic form, and that's all it needs to be. So just start clicking on the books, and they don't even have to be independently published ones. I tend to go for independently published ones when I start doing my research, but you can click on anything you want. So for example, we can come and just click on an independently published book here, and then what I like to do is just come down to the products related to this item. It might be called something else. It might be like a frequently bought together or sponsored stuff. I don't know. It might be called something else, but just click on these and then start clicking through them and look for something that just seems a bit more niche specific. Okay, so look at what they're titling their books: composition notebooks, shark. So maybe we could look at shark composition notebooks. I don't know, maybe that's probably a bit too competitive, and just keep clicking through until you find something that seems a little bit more niche down. Okay, so let's select another one of these and just keep repeating the process until we find something that looks a little bit more niche down. Okay, so this is another book. Let's just scroll through and we end up on this marble composition notebook, and again just keep going through, come down. Marble composition notebook, it seems that's probably quite competitive. So maybe we can go down another level of niching down. So let's go and check out Marble Composition Notebook. Now I think if you just do a little bit more research here, you want to see how many books are directly related to Marble Composition Notebooks. And I already know that there's going to be a lot of Marble Composition Notebooks because they're easy to make, and the first few pages are going to be pretty jammed with Marble Composition Notebooks. Okay, so what I'm going to do is look around until I find another level of niching down that's going to give me a better chance of being found organically. Okay, so what I kind of ended up picking here for my sub niche was black Marble Composition Notebooks, because I thought Marble Composition Notebook, it looked very competitive, and you'd have to assume that that is very competitive because they're so easy to make. But black Marble Composition Notebook. So when it comes to niching down like this, like I said before, when I niche down, when I find the phrase that I'm niching down for, so black Marble Composition Notebook or addition and subtraction workbook, this is what I'm going to be using for the title of my book. It's the keyword that I think is going to give me the best chance, or give me some chance to get ranked organically. Okay, so that doesn't mean it's going to happen, but I want it to be a better chance of us being found organically for the title of our book. So our niche and our title is going to be black Marble Composition Notebook. I'm going to talk more about that and why I've gone with that in just a second, and how I've given myself a little bit of confidence when it comes to picking this for my title, because I know that's something people get really hung up on. I'm going to explain that in just a second. So just because we've niched down, it does not mean that we're going to get found on the front page for this search term organically, without a doubt. It does not mean that. But what I've established, and again I'll show you in a second, that is if this phrase has got traffic going to it, if it has buyer traffic going to it, then we have a better chance of getting found organically. And even if we don't get found organically on the first page, we're going to have a better chance of getting there easier through spending a little bit of money on ads. Okay, so this gives us a chance to spend just a few dollars, maybe $20, to get our book ranked onto the front page for this keyword phrase. Okay, and from my experience of publishing especially these notebooks, is that when it comes to releasing your book, it doesn't take that many sales to get your book ranked on the front page. Okay, so if you went for like a composition notebook and that was like the keyword that you were going after, then you'd have to think like it's going to take you a lot of money to get ranked on the front page for that. Okay, so you'd have to spend a lot, you have to do like a lot of marketing to get enough sales to warrant that position on the front page. But when we niche down to something that has less search results and something that dies off the front page quicker than just a composition notebook, okay, I'm going to talk about the whole dying off the front page in the case studies. I'll go into way more detail. But basically, we've niched down, and it's going to give us a better chance of getting ranked on the first page. And if we don't, then we start running ads. And since we've niched down, we won't have to spend as much money to get onto the front page. Okay, so hopefully that makes sense. So again, to use the addition and subtraction workbook as an example, now imagine if I just created a math workbook, and that was the way that I was positioning my book. How much money, like how much chance do you think I had to get ranked organically on the front page? Not that big a chance, I don't think. But when I need, or if I had to spend money on an ad campaign to get it ranked for those terms, it's going to be much more money because it's such a broad niche, right? That makes sense. The broader it is, the more competition, the more money you'd have to spend. So math workbook would have been, maybe impossible to get ranked for. But if we niche down to addition and subtraction workbook, we had a better chance of getting ranked organically. I can't remember if we did get ranked organically straight away for this. I don't think so. But when it comes to running the ad campaigns, it took just a few sales to get this book ranked. Okay, so let me just show you something quickly. I said to myself I wasn't going to show off any of my books in this video, but out of the 5 books, one of them was kind of just a side project, one that I didn't really care about, to be honest. And I feel a little bit ashamed to say that, because that shouldn't be the case when it comes to publishing. But I wanted to try and make a point out of this. So what I wanted to do was to do the process that I've spoken about in this video. So the broad niche, then we niche down a little bit, see if we can fit onto the first page, run some ads to it. And what I found is, I know that there's kind of this release period where you get a little bit of favor, but what I found is that when I released the book that I'm about to show you, it was nowhere. I couldn't find it anywhere for a fair while, like a week. I can't remember how long it was. And then I started running some ad campaigns to it, and I got 1 sale from the ad campaign, and it boosted it onto the front page for its keyword search. I've loaded up an incognito here. I'm going to show off the notebook very quickly. So it's a boho composition notebook. As you can see, there's loads of these, and I didn't want to do this because I didn't know how to really stand out in this niche other than to make something slightly different, because you know, you don't have to be different. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. You just got to give the customer, you know, something different that's still good. And you will, if you can get onto the front page, then you'll have a chance of selling it. But this is my book. It's actually dropped down the ranking, unfortunately, because it's this one here. This was my book here. Now the ranking is like 490,000 at the moment. It's sold, I think, 2 copies since it's released. You know, I'm not wild about this. I didn't really care for it too much. But the point is, we got ranked on the front page by just a couple sales. Okay, so that's the power of running ads to your book early on. And I didn't even bother to break even on this one. I just went for sort of the standard $5.99 price, offered something different, niched down, got my keywords in there, did all those things, then ended up on the first page. So but you know, I don't know if this one's going to stick on the front page. I'm not feeling this niche in general. I didn't feel like there was enough sort of buyer traffic going to it. But the point is there, right? You know, there's loads of these books. There's loads and loads of them across loads of different pages. There's tons of them. But the point is, you can get your book seen on the front pages for the keywords that you target if you do it in a thoughtful way. Okay, so back to the black marble composition notebook. So there's a few things that I like to do just to sort of give myself a little bit of peace of mind when it comes to selecting the title for my book. So black marble composition notebook, the first thing that I like to do is to make sure that when we come to the search box up here, is that there are other variations of this keyword phrase being searched. Okay, so people are really going niche down to this. So you're going to assume that if Amazon is bringing back other suggestions on top of what we already have, is that there's going to be some form of traffic going to it. Okay, so black marble composition notebook, we have that in already. And as we can see from our extension here, we have people looking for black marble composition notebook, wide ruled, 100 pages, wide ruled, quad ruled, 8-pack, 100 pages, blah, 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 blah. So it looks like Amazon is making these suggestions. I'm not 100% sure how this works. But, you know, generally, I think that's a good sign that people are possibly looking for it, okay? So the other thing that I look for is to see how many people are actually using this as the title of their book. So going through these, it doesn't look like many people are actually using black marble composition notebook as their main title. So it might be in their title of their book somewhere, but not many people are using it. Okay, so I think that's going to give us an even better chance, because your title does hold some power of getting ranked for this search phrase. Okay, so if not many people are using it, there's possibly traffic going to it. Then if we're the only one that uses it in our title, then we might have a better chance of being ranked for it. Okay, so the other ways that I give myself a little bit of peace of mind is to use a couple extensions, a couple tools here. You don't have to do this, I don't think, but I sometimes use the AMZ Scout here just to give yourself some. So I've typed in the black marble composition notebook, and it's estimating that there's 1,220 searches a month. And then I used to use Helium 10 for these type of things as well, but you know, it's these aren't accurate. The data that comes back from any software like this that gives you search volume is not Amazon's data. Okay, so you are taking some risk when it comes to creating this, and that's why I don't recommend that people fret too much when it comes to creating the title of their book, because all these softwares that give you estimations are just estimations. Amazon is not going to share the actual search volume for any of these keywords. Okay, but those are the main 2 ways that I just sort of give myself that peace of mind. Okay, so from there, after all of that, what was the next step? The next step was to create the book and add some value to it. Okay, so when it comes to adding value to notebooks, now I think that's borderline being impossible. So that only leaves you with creating something better or something different. So in the case of something like a black marble composition notebook, what I would do is to come down. You can see that all these designs, like they all look the same. But what I did notice is that someone was doing an actual like black marble type of design here. So what I think I would do in order to add value to my book is to actually hire someone to create something potentially better and more aesthetically pleasing than this. So I could use this listing as an example for them and say, look, I want something that looks better than this. And after all said and done, you're going to have a unique book in a niche that's got traffic going to it, where you're not going to get lost, and you can hopefully run ads to this to get boosted onto the front page and then start seeing sales. Okay, and then obviously from here, if we're running ads to these books, we're going to be looking at optimizing those ads over time for making profit with them, turning search terms off that don't make sense, maybe creating multiple ad campaigns if we're not getting any impressions or clicks and things like that. Okay, so obviously I can't go over all of that in this video, but what I will be doing when the big case study project comes out, when I do that, it's going to go over absolutely everything. And the great thing is, since those books are already released, the notebooks, especially the 5 notebooks, sorry, is that I have a lot of data, a lot of ad data already, and how I've been adjusting them and tweaking them to make sure that they are going to make money for the long term. Okay. And also, just to note here, like when it comes to someone doing a case study, me for example, and you're seeing me look at black marble composition notebooks, this is just an example. Like I've not gone into much more detail myself at looking at this niche. Like I've not seen how quickly it dies off the first few pages or anything like that, my actual competition. If you see me creating a book, or you see one of my books, you know, the boho one for example, don't just go and create that, man. Like that's not the point of doing this. Okay, the point is to give you my perspective, my thoughts on how I go about creating books for my publishing business. Okay, so you need to focus on yours, take what you can from this, but go your own route. Okay, so you want to make a black marble composition notebook, be my guest. Like, you know, if you want to do that, do more research, and you know, go ahead, do that. That's up to you, but I just don't recommend that you know, copy me basically. Just one more thing regarding ad campaigns. What I've noticed is since that I'm running ads to multiple books now, so like I've created more notebooks than I would typically for like a coloring book. You know, I'd only do like one of them, but where I'm doing like 5 or 6 of the notebooks means I'm spending more money on ads. I'm not that comfortable doing that. So what I'm looking at now is switching off ad campaigns completely for some of these books, especially notebooks, because you know, I'm happy to keep running ads to things like coloring books, things that I think have a better chance of selling. But for notebooks, I'm not sure I want to keep the ad spend going on and on and on and on. So what I'm going to be experimenting with, and I did it with the boho one, I'm going to check how that goes through time and see if it dies off the front page. But what I did is basically just run the ad for a little bit, sort of blast out a couple of sales, see where it gets ranked, then just turn it off and see how it goes. Okay, because I don't want to keep running lots of ad campaigns. Like I know what my budget is, I'm going to go over it this month because of these books, but you know, that's something that to take into consideration, and again, we'll be showing off in the case studies. So quick reality check here. Now this all sounds great on paper, it sounds good that I'm doing it, sounds good that I've had some success with my first few notebooks, but really you're going to create books that don't work. Like that boho one, I can tell you now, is probably going to die off. It's going to hit 1 million soon. It's going to leave the front page, and I'm pretty confident that one's not going to work out for me. So this happens, like, and it's going to happen to a lot of your books, especially if you don't take a thoughtful approach to it. You're going to make books that are not going to sell, and that's just the way that it goes. But that's better than making no sales from publishing thousands of books every single month, right? Okay, so just one more thing here. Now, the absolute best advice that you're ever going to hear ever when it comes to publishing is to try and make each book that you create at least 5% better than the last one that you created. So all this keyword research, ad campaigns, positioning your book, where your book dies off, it doesn't mean anything unless you're creating a good book. So quality over quantity is what they say, which is completely useless advice. So you'll never make quality books unless you're just naturally good at this whole thing. Okay, so some people will just naturally be good at it. Okay, or you have to strive to get better. Every single book that you create, make it better. Try and make it better than the last book that you created. Then when you do this, you'll do what I do sometimes, and you'll look back at the books that you created a while ago that you thought were legit, and you'll look at them and you go, man, why did I publish this book? And that's why the 5% thing is so important, because eventually you will be forced into creating quality books over time. Okay, quality over quantity. I mean, honestly, does anyone really ever upload a book and go, yeah, this is awful, I purposely made an awful book, I hope that I make sales? No one does that. No one does that. Come on. And that's why long-term visions are incredibly important when it comes to KDP. And honestly, that it is so, I've been in this position where I've shown people my books and they've said, you know, you need to focus on your quality. It's so frustrating, because people don't know what quality is unless you set yourself that standard of being able to create a better book, because we're all going to start this at different stages. Like mine were terrible. Honestly, I look back at some of my books and I'm like, man, these were really bad. But now I look at the books I'm creating now with this mentality of being like 5% better with every book that I create. I look at these and look at the comparison between the two, and it's night and day. Okay, so coming up, there's going to be another section to this video. So yes, this is a long video. If you're not feeling it, then get out of here. Like, I know this is a long ass video, but the next section is going to be about the reality of selling notebooks on KDP and the hype that is being attached to that through YouTube, etc, etc. Okay, so it's an interesting point. We've gone over the really important stuff here, but if you want to stay for the rest of this video where I'm going to kind of rant and talk, then I'd love for you to do so. But let me just touch on one big thing before I move on to that, and that is this big project that I'm creating that I keep going on about but not actually releasing enough information about. So basically my goal when it comes to creating this YouTube now is to be as transparent as possible, to give people as much information as possible, to show off as much as possible, because whilst I'm not like the most successful publisher ever, I'm doing pretty well through publishing and I'm getting better and better at it. So I'm at the point now where I'm happy to show off some of the books, my mentality, the thought process, and all those things that go behind the way that I run my publishing business, right? Okay, so with this massive project that I'm working on, what I want to do is to have something that is accessible and helpful for every single person that views it. Okay, so inside of that project, what I want to do is to include a completely up-to-date beginner's tutorial for Amazon KDP. So that's obviously going to be optional for some people, but I think what I've come to realize is that sometimes I just assume that people are past that stage and just dive into the heavy stuff, which leads to people getting confused. So that would be there to act as a way to sort of ease people into this better approach to publishing. Okay, so they can take what they've heard before, take what you've heard before, put it to one side, and then just focus your efforts on a better approach to publishing. Okay, so that's what I guess it'd be like a beginner's course, call it that if you like. So from there we can move on to the bigger part of that project, which is going to be the case studies. So case studies for those 5 notebooks that I've had created and everything that's gone into them, including the how I created them, how I found the niches for them, how I did the ad campaigns, how I'm adjusting ad campaigns over time, pretty much everything that went into it. Okay, and of course, obviously I'm going to be showing off those books. The next big part of the project is going to be the 2 coloring books that I am creating at the moment. So for me, this is way more exciting because I'm going to be turning my attention to creating kind of a brand out of these books. Okay, so going to be creating a website, capturing emails, increasing sales, hopefully through Etsy store. And again, going into detail about the marketing, ad campaigns, absolutely everything that's gone into those projects. And of course, I'll be showing off the website that I create. I'll be showing off the Etsy store, how I've created the listings for them. Again, absolutely everything. So for there also included will be an extensive look into ads. Okay, so obviously now at this point I have I think around 2 years of ad spends, which is nearly around, I think it's $4,000 of spend over those 2 years. So it's not insane, but it's enough, and it's caused me a lot of tears and a lot of stress, but it's been a huge learning experience that's been totally worth it. Tons of tweaking, tons of campaigns. And since some of those campaigns are up and running for those case study books, it's going to be the perfect example to show you how they work and how I adjust them over time, how you decide when to turn them off, how you decide when to make more campaigns, etc, etc. Okay, so tagging on to all of this, I'm going on and on, but this is something I'm putting pretty much all my time into. Tagging onto this, I've had a lot of people messaging me over the last year or so about hiring people, hiring freelancers, outsourcing work, whatever you want to call it. So what I'm going to be doing inside of that project is to have like a full-blown course on how you can go about hiring people and how to make sure that you're not getting ripped off, etc, etc. Okay, so if you're interested in that project, I don't know what I'm going to call it yet, but if you're interested in that and you want to keep up to date with it, then either subscribe to my channel if you haven't already, or join my Facebook group from the description below, or sign up to my free ad course, which puts you onto my subscribers list for that, and I'll email you when things are updated, etc, etc. But just go and do all those 3 things: subscribe, join my Facebook group, get the free ads course from the descriptions below, and you'll be kept up to date with that project and other things as well. Okay, so just moving on to the last part of this video now. I know it's a long video. If you're still with me, congratulations, and do yourself a favor and type free course into the comment section below. If you're the first person to say that, one of the first 5 people to say free course, get a hold of me on Facebook, and I'll send you a copy of my free beginners course from Udemy. Okay, so let's take a look at the truth when it comes to selling notebooks and no content books, or any type of book, through Amazon KDP. So this section kind of dedicated to notebooks because there's a huge scene on YouTube. There's a lot of misleading videos on YouTube. A lot of people that are just trying to make commissions for certain software, and they're promoting notebooks as an easy way to make a passive income online when it is not. And the thing is, if you're reasonably new to this game, you would have seen that there's like a million YouTube tutorials teaching people how to create these notebooks, upload them onto Amazon, and it is a good way to get your feet wet. Like, I will admit that, like, some people just want a little bit of confidence when it comes to actually pressing the publish button, and that's fine, I guess. But in my opinion, the problem with this is that what's the point unless they have a genuine chance of making you sales? Like, what we're doing is about making sales. Creating the books is easy. Okay, so you can get book bulk, you get tangent template, you can make those, Canva, whatever, you can create these. Like, this software brings the creation process quicker to us all, doesn't it? But that's not the point. It's too easy to do. And especially with notebooks and low content books and things like that, and Amazon's huge upload limits, how hyped up they've been on YouTube for the last couple of years, you know, the chances of you making sales from selling a notebook is very slim unless you put the level of thought that I've shown you in this video into it. And it's easy, right? You just come across the tangent templates, you go to BookBolt or go to some other website that has the interiors, you put them together, you make a cover in Canva, then you upload it onto Amazon, and you've become, you know, an independent publisher. So I was thinking to myself, like, I feel like this pursuit, it sets people up for a really extremely low standard. So when people do things this way, so when they make the notebooks and they don't make any sales, what happens is we go into this whole, hey, it's saturated, that's the problem phase. So then we move on to things like coloring books or higher content books, and then we see if we can make sales from there. But the problem is, and from what I've seen, is that the low standard just moves from one book to the next, regardless of what category it falls into. So if you're creating bad notebooks, if you're creating bad low content books, if you're creating bad medium content books, you're just creating bad books. And like I said at the start of this video, is the problem the trend that we're chasing, or is the problem our approach? Is our problem what we're actually delivering to Amazon's customers? And the problem is people want to hear, like, hey, this is a good niche that's got traffic going to it. This is how you create a book for this niche, go and make sales. But it's never been that easy. You know, maybe it was like a little bit easier a long time ago, but it's never been that easy unless you get lucky. So what if the problem, like I say, isn't the niche or the type of book? What if the problem wasn't the keywords or the title? What if the problem was the product being undesirable and unfindable? So after my horrifically bad spell with uploading lots of low content books, I'm talking about 300 over the course of 3 months, I think it was, I changed my approach to publishing, the one that I've shared in this video. I've changed it completely, and that's when I started seeing success. You know, having months where you're selling over 1,000 notebooks, selling over 1,000 books. So whether it's the no content books which are selling at the moment, whether it's the low content books which are selling as well, whether it's the medium ones or the high content books, they're all selling. So that's why I came all the way back and started doing notebooks, to make the point that the trend isn't the issue, but it's the approach. So what if we took this approach and implemented it into any type of book that we create? Why should there be any difference in the quality when it comes to coloring books, activity books, notebooks? Why should there be any difference? What if the approach meant that you didn't have to sit on your computer all day uploading notebook after notebook after notebook, hoping that one of those books is going to stick and make you big money? The chances are that's not going to happen. It might do, but for most of us, it's not going to happen. And the thing is, it's so disheartening not making sales on Amazon. I know it is, because I've been there, I've spoken to people, I speak to people that don't make sales. It's extremely disheartening. And I do think YouTube is part of the problem. I think it's become a kind of a get rich quick scheme, and that's one of the only reasons why I sort of stayed away from the whole notebook scene, is because, you know, some of these videos promoting the idea of an easy passive income from notebooks, they have like over 1 million views, and for the most part they teach people to upload trash books because they're not actually doing it themselves. Like, it's a real shady side of KDP, and I think it needs a bit of a light shone on it. And unfortunately, it comes from those kind of like side hustle channels that are showing you a new way of making money every single week, who don't actually publish books. And they're saying to you, hey, look, if you get BookBolt and then put a book cover together in Canva, slap it on Amazon, you know, you're going to make passive income for months to come, when you can't, not with that approach anyway. So for me, this is the next level of transparency that I think is needed for independent publishers that get tips from YouTube, because so many people are wasting a serious amount of time with dead-end pursuits. And it's not just notebooks, it's every type of book. And I've come to realize, and this is the trap that I fell into, is that just because you can create something easily, it doesn't mean that you should. That we're selling a real product to a real human, and we do need to dig a little bit deeper into that side of publishing. You know, the side that we miss out on, which is actually giving the customer something they want and being found by them. And to clarify, I've got nothing against BookBolt or Canva. I'm just saying anything that allows us to create these books quicker, you know, that's great, that it allows us to save time, but at the same time it makes us lazy as well. So do I think that you should create notebooks? You know what, I don't care. Basically, it doesn't matter what type of book you want to do. Notebooks, low content, medium content, higher content, do whatever you find interesting. If you find notebooks interesting, pursue them, but pursue them with a good approach. And again, to rewind here, like, this was the notebook thing is not the point of the video. Like, the case study for the notebooks is not going to be the point. Okay, the approach is the point. No matter what type of book that you're going to be publishing, it's the approach that matters. Okay, so that's it for this video. Like, I know it's been a long one. I know I don't upload that many videos at the moment, but for the people that have been following me for a long time and have actually watched and listened to the entirety of this video, I am eternally grateful that you decide to stick around and do so. But I have missed making these videos, and you know, it's just been a case of like, I'm trying to publish books for Q4. I'm trying to get this huge project that I'm working on sort of done before the end of the year, and also a couple other business pursuits as well. So I've not had the time to actually, you know, make multiple videos. But I wanted to make this one because every time I actually look for KDP stuff on YouTube, the lack of transparency is pretty staggering. But we're not going to get into that anyway. Look, if you're interested in that whole project that I'm working on, you know, join the Facebook group in the description below, get the free ads course, subscribe to my channel, leave some comments. I don't care, just do something, and I'll see you in another video very soon.